Well, today we have an amazing guest with us. Joining us is former adult film star and current pro wrestling personality, Trina Michaels. Trina, thanks for joining us today.
Hi, guys. How are you?
Doing good, doing good. Now, what people may or may not know is that you starred in adult films from 2004 to 2008, but what they may not know is that you are also a huge wrestling fan. Do you remember when you became a wrestling fan?
Yes, actually, I do. I grew up in like a very conservative home, so I wasn't exposed to it as a kid, and then probably around 18, which was right around the time of the Attitude Era. That's when I started watching it for a little bit, and I still to this day remember going to my first live WWE event. So that will always stick in my mind.
All right.
Who were some of your favorites back then?
Oh, geez. Oh, all the popular ones. That was back when the Hardy Boys were the Hardy Boys and Trish Stratus, that badass bitch.
Now, how did you become involved in pro wrestling? I mean, was there something that just said, hey, I have to get involved with this right now?
The same way that I got into films, I kind of just got presented with an opportunity and it turned into this whole adventure. I was living in LA at the time and I knew people connected with, different productions and stuff. And they asked if I could come do this wrestling show. I was like, yeah, sure. Why not? And, I was just there to have fun and it was cool. And then after that, another like an indie show in Cali was like, oh, we have this show going. I was like, okay, cool. So I started doing shows and I don't know, it just took its own crazy course. I never expected it to go this far. So
sure.
Now, are there any comparisons between the wrestling business and the adult film industry?
Oh yeah, I get this question all the time. Yes, definitely. At the end of the day, it's all entertainment. We're all just trying to put something out there to make fans happy. So, and speaking of fans, most of them are the same. The nerdy guys in the basement. Obviously the wrestling reaches a slightly younger crowd than I'm used to. But honestly, at shows, that's never been an issue. The kids kind of hate me more than the adults do, so it's kind of fun.
Hey, yeah, you accomplished a lot in the world of adult entertainment. You won a lot of awards. Is there any specific things that you would like to accomplish, maybe, though, in the world of wrestling? Is there anything that you have your eyes set on or any goals?
Right now, I really talked about WWE, but let's be honest, my past won't ever get me there. But, there's still a lot of other great shows to be on. And I think right now I'm probably gunning for Ring of Honor, honestly. So that would be a good spot, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, you've wrestled for a lot of different promotions. What are some of the favorite promotions that you've worked for so far?
Let's see. Well, like I said, I started out in California. All my promotions out there were awesome. AWS, SoCal Pro. I've done some stuff in Texas, Puerto Rico, and then obviously out here in Florida. Right now, my big one is Full Impact Pro in Orlando. So, yeah.
Sure.
I guess that's my home promotion, if you want to call it right now.
Sure. Well, we also just found out, too, that you're going to be working down in Ronin, I believe they're located in Miami in Florida. Can you tell us what you'll be doing for them in the next few weeks?
Yes. They have a show on February 20th here in South Florida. I've actually been on a couple other shows. And I am currently, for them, I am working with my tag team group, the Savages. So we're just trying to, bring something different and a little bit edgy to the Ronin show.
All right.
Okay. Now, you just said not too long ago that you realized that you probably wouldn't fit well in WWE because of your past. But if you were ever offered a deal, would you pursue it, or do you like what you're doing now?
No, I would never pursue it. Yeah, of course I would. But no, I like where I'm at right now. It's, I'll be honest, the last couple of years have been a little hard. It's been a bit of a struggle. I had a brief spar with Dragon Gate and Evolve, and that kind of fizzled out. So it's been a little frustrating trying to find my place on the Florida Indies. But I like where I'm at and where things are headed right now. So pretty excited.
All right. Now, speaking of WWE, you'll be attending WrestleMania weekend in the Bay Area, and you have an upcoming contest where fans can win a date with you. Can you give us the details on this amazing opportunity?
Well, I haven't hammered out, every fine detail yet, but something to the effect of I'm going to hold a raffle probably starting at maybe the middle of February, beginning of March. You can purchase raffle tickets to something like, 10 for $5 or something like that. I don't know. I'll choose some winning numbers, and then the lucky fans get to hang out with me for a couple hours.
Awesome.
Maybe go to dinner, maybe go to one of the WWE live shows. We'll see.
Awesome.
All right. Now,
but keep your minds out of the gutter. It's a deep state.
Of course. Of course.
Now, you spent some time working with, at the time, Jon Moxley, but he's currently Dean Ambrose when he was in Dragon Gate.
Yes.
How was he to work with?
He is a brilliant genius. I honestly only worked with him on his last weekend before he signed, so I didn't get to spend too much time with him. But I had a good experience, I guess you could say.
Well, we hear also you've been called Moody Michaels. Is there any story you could tell us about how you got that nickname?
Moody Michaels. Wow. You might think when you meet me that I'm, sweet and nice and everything, and I smile and friendly, but you cross me and the Moody Michaels bitch is going to come out.
Now, you were in 2010. You won, or you were nominated for an AVN award for best crossover. Are you a little bummed that you didn't get that?
I don't know if I'd say bummed. I'm definitely not surprised because just like in wrestling, the suits that are in charge of everything have never been big fans of mine. I don't know if maybe I just don't kiss enough ass or something. I don't know. But I'm not surprised that I didn't win. I do think it's kind of lame because what they consider crossover is not crossover. And a lot of people that I know from the film world, all they really know about wrestling is like WWE. So they don't understand what I have to do to come up on the indies and to build my name and build that character. So they don't really quite understand the challenge and the fact that, I pretty much am a crossover. It's, I have good shows I'm on, good tag teams, good stories and stuff. So I definitely say I'm a wrestler who just happens to have done films in the past.
All right, now I got a little question because China from the Attitude Era. So she was a wrestler, now turned porn star, and you're kind of like vice versa.
Yes.
What do you think about China? I mean, do you think she made the right choice to where? Do you think she still could have stuck around in pro wrestling, or do you think she's, I don't know, making it big now in the porn industry?
If I'm correct, she got to play She-Hulk, so that's pretty cool. I can't say there's anything wrong with her making a film. That's her own decision and her choice to do whatever she wants with her body. So good for her. She probably saw it as an opportunity to keep her name out there and put something different out for the fans. So cool.
Now, we are, we're pretty new to this whole social media thing where we've got a lot of Twitter accounts, we've got Facebook accounts, and all that. What are your thoughts on just social media in general as the way to get around to talk to people these days? It seems like it can be a little overwhelming at times. What are your thoughts on that?
Definitely. When I first signed up on Twitter, 5 years ago, I was all about it. I gotta post all, what am I doing today? I'm going here, I'm going there. And now I just kind of really don't care. You're going to get a tweet from me when I feel like tweeting. So, in my personal opinion, social media is the downfall of civilization. But as an entertainer and a businesswoman, I guess you could say, it's definitely good for keeping your product out there and keeping your name fresh in people's minds. So it's a good tool if you use it right.
I have a question on women's wrestling, because today, women's wrestling today on TV isn't really put in the biggest spotlight, if you will. So what are your thoughts on how women are used today? I guess I know we could talk about WWE or TNA or any really mainstream company, but I mean, do you think that women are really not getting a fair shake? Because there's a lot of great women wrestlers too out there. How do you feel that they're being portrayed on TV? And I mean, what would you want to see change with that?
Let's see. Well, how do I say this? I guess it's easy to sexualize women. That's kind of the role we're usually placed in. And to some degree, that's perfectly fine. Sex sells, and, hot bodies attract attention. So that's fine in its own aspect, but I think there should also be the emphasis placed on these women are athletes and they're putting themselves out there the same way the guys do. So why shouldn't they get the same kind of respect?
Mm-hmm.
Now, you're also going to be joined today by Val Venis on our show. So do you, you obviously watched the Attitude Era. Do you remember when Val came out and he was kind of acting like he was in the adult film industry? Did anybody ever say anything about that?
No, I think this would be the first connection there. I'm familiar. I don't know everything about him, but I'm kind of a little familiar with his character. So kind of cool that I get to share the podcast with him. I've seen that people were saying we're both like the edgy people of wrestling. So cool.
All right, now, Trina, too, right now what's happening is that it's Valentine's Day weekend. If everybody's listening to this right now, there's probably a lot of guys out there who are thinking, wow, how could I have Trina Michaels as my Valentine? So a two-part question for you, though. What's the perfect Valentine's Day date, maybe, for you? And if there's maybe a guy out there, maybe one day, who could possibly, steal your heart, what would be the perfect Valentine Day for you? Just the perfect guy out there. What's the perfect guy, basically, for Trina Michaels?
The perfect guy does what I say when I tell him to. Let's see. I don't know. I am pretty hard to handle. I got some high expectations of myself, so I kind of expect a lot from the people around me too. And I need somebody that goes as hard as I does, or goes as hard as I do. So if you're trying to impress me, you definitely have your work cut out. But as far as the perfect date, honestly, I'm a simple girl. Take me to the beach. I love the beach. So that's my happy place.
Well, there you go, guys. If you're listening and you see Trina out there, make sure you bring her to the beach.
Yes.
And impress her, too. You got to really impress her to bring her to the beach, though.
Yes. You better bring your A game if you're trying to impress me.
Well, there you go.
Lightning round.
Can you name either one or a few of your past colleagues who you think would be good in the world of wrestling?
Ooh, Phoenix Marie. That's an easy answer. Phoenix Marie.
Okay.
All right, now if you could star in an adult film again with any pro wrestler, who would it be?
Let's see. I'm gonna go away from the mainstream. I would say Caleb Conley.
Wow. Who is your favorite wrestler today?
Ooh. I don't know. I had to pass on that one.
Okay.
Do you have a personal favorite movie that you starred in? There's always one, maybe. Somebody always has one. They're always like, all right, I like this one.
Well, there's a lot to choose from. And the names aren't appropriate for me to answer, so.
It's okay.
I will. Here, I'll give you a funny story on that one. Since my birthday just recently passed, probably my first year in the business, I had to film on my birthday. So I walked on the set and I told the guy I'd never met him before. I walked him and I said, "It's my birthday. You better do me good." And he did.
There you go.
Right. So, who, now that you are wrestling, who would be a dream opponent of yours?
Let's see. Brittany, TNA.
Well, there you go, guys. Trina, we're talking about the world of social media too, and I know you hate and maybe loathe some of it today, but for any of the fans listening, where can they keep up with you if they want to find any updates, either Twitter or Facebook or anything like that? Can you let the fans know?
Yeah. Twitter is at Trina Michaels. And if you want to follow my wrestling storylines, you can follow at Trina Mania. Facebook, I suck at Facebook, but I do have one, and I'm trying to post on it more. So you can find me there under Trina Michaels as well. There's also my YouTube page, which is Trina Michaels Videos with the S on the end. And that's it. I do not have Instagram or Snapchat or any of that other stuff.
All right. Thanks again to Trina Michaels. Jonathan, back on the Love Boat, I would love for pro wrestling to stop insulting the fans' intelligence. There's just been too many storylines, too many things going on that it's like, guys, come on. We can go online, Google it, and obviously see that you're lying. Does it bother you sometimes? I mean, there's a lot of examples, but I mean, you guys could just, I'm sure there's been times, we were watching and we were like, that didn't happen. Why are they selling it like this, And this isn't 1980. This isn't 1990. You can't just say something and nobody can really look it up, you know what I mean, unless you saw it. We're living in the world of the World Wide Web. You can go online and look up anything. Especially wrestling history. Jonathan, would you love for them to stop insulting the fans?
Yeah, one thing that always bothered me was with Kane. They've talked about Kane so much, and whenever you first found out about Kane, it was that he was horribly disfigured because he was in a fire, and then he takes the mask off and he's got like one kind of weird contact lens in his eye, and he's kind of got male pattern baldness, but there was really no horrible disfiguring. Then they're like, well, it was all emotional, and it's just like they never really tie up their loose ends. So yeah. I think in that instance, I definitely think that they shouldn't. And you're speaking earlier about the Undertaker and Triple H.
Yeah, it's where at WrestleMania, they never said that he wrestled him 2 times prior. So when you watched it, when he wrestled him for the 3rd time, they never really went back to the first original time that he fought him until actually after the fact. But it's little things like that. I mean, I'm granted there's tons more stuff to talk about, and I don't want to get too much into it, but really, all in all, guys, just stop insulting the fans' intelligence, especially in the age of the internet, because granted, if I hear something and if I'm not sure, Google it. You know what I mean? We're going to go online, we're going to Google it, we're going to look up stuff, and we're going to see that it doesn't exist. Granted, okay, you could tell a kid, a 10-year-old anything, and they're just going to be like, okay, they could care less, but for us older fans, we like to, we're curious, so we'll look up things, and when we figure it out that they're lying to us, blatantly lying, and, I don't know, it's just stop insulting the fans' intelligence, pretty much. I would love for that to happen. I'm getting flustered the more I talk about it, Jonathan. But if you guys are listening, Facebook.com/Another Wrestling Podcast. Give us a like. Maybe even leave a message on this show right now. Tell us maybe some things that you wish you weren't insulted as fans. Or has there been anything where you felt insulted that they just kept lying to you about? I'd be curious to know what you guys have to say. So make sure you hit us up on Facebook as well. So yeah.
I would love if you liked us on Facebook.
That's true. It's the month of love, because we also had Brother Love not too long ago, guys. Yeah.
Well, I think that during the era now of the WWE Network and all of this wrestling that we have in the entire world, we have New Japan Pro Wrestling, we have Lucha Underground, we have Ring of Honor, we have local promotions now that have TV time, we have TNA, we have WWE. I just think that there is a lot of wrestling on television right now.
Yeah, I would love for a lot less programming. I mean, if you think about it, back in the day, you had a show on once a week, and that was it. Granted, like we've just said, times have changed. I get it. But, I mean, if you count it down, like you were just talking about, Monday you got Raw. Wednesday you got Lucha Underground, NXT. Thursday you got SmackDown. Friday you got TNA. And then if you don't count Superstars or Main Event, which is still going on also. And then, granted, those are the live programmings. But then, like you said, if you're indie fans, you got all the local promotions too, running stuff on YouTube and whatnot. There's a lot of wrestling to watch, Jonathan, and you kind of got to pick and choose your poison out there to, what you really want to watch. I personally always watch Raw live. Everything else I DVR, only because I just don't have time to watch it all live. But so I at least try to make the point to watch Raw live. Everything else I'll catch when I can. I mean, do you think it's just too much? Even the 3 hours of Raw. 3 hours, man, that's just too much TV time. Even Triple H said it in Steve Austin's podcast that, he wishes he can go back to the 2 hour one. And I don't know, you think that'll ever happen too, or is it just too much going on right now?
I think with Triple H at the helm that you may get that sort of retooling of the 3 hour Raw. I think it loses its... I remember watching wrestling back when it was 2 hours, and they would give you that little extra 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And I was just so happy. It was just like you have breakfast, you have lunch, you have dinner, and then you're like, oh, I wish I just had something else just to be like a little morsel of something else. And that's what that 15 minutes was. Now that it's actually 3 full hours of programming, they're putting on. So let's just think about this: 3 hours of Raw, 2 hours of SmackDown. So that's 5 hours. NXT's an hour, so that is 6 hours. Then you have Main Event, which is another hour, so that's 7 hours right there just in WWE alone. And that's not if there's a pay-per-view that week. That's not if there's an NXT pay-per-view.
Did you even count Superstars?
No. See, so that's, I mean...
Yeah, man, just it's over... don't get me wrong. I love wrestling, and I would watch as much as I can, but, where you're doing that weekly, it's got to kill your storylines. It's got to kill some of your characters. I don't know, 1 hour of NXT, I feel, is almost greater than 3 hours of Raw sometimes. It's just, it's the right amount of wrestling, the right amount of time, and just 3 hours, man. It's got to be so hard to come up with 3 hours every week for one show. Man, just too much to keep up with,
Yes, sir. I was just trying to think about more shows and how long that they are. It's really gotten to the point where if you are a casual wrestling fan, that you're probably going to pick one thing, and that's pretty much all you're going to watch. So I do have friends that are just like, you know what, I'm only watching WWE Raw, or I'm only watching SmackDown. And I think that's something that was cool back in the day whenever they had the brand extension where it was Raw and SmackDown. You actually had people that were like, SmackDown was the only way to go, or Raw was the only way to go. And I think that with having so much, so little competition and so much programming, that you don't get as many people watching that. And when they wonder why, ratings and stuff are down, it's because there's just so much programming going on.
Exactly. You're giving them too much, and then what happens with a lot of these other shows, SmackDown almost becomes 20 minutes of that show becomes, a rehash of what happened on Raw. And then, Superstars and Main Event, they're always rehashing angles that happened on Raw. It's just almost like get rid of Main Event and get rid of Superstars and just make
make a show that's like a weekly rehash of what's happened on both shows or something, just where in case you missed it and you don't have time to sit through 5 hours, you can watch an hour and watch all the highlights of every show or something like that. But that's the thing. All in all, guys, we would love less programming. But one other thing I would really love to talk about before Val Venis joins us, I would love for less cartoony gimmicks, Jonathan. For example, Los Matadores. I would love more reality in replacement of this. And my whole thing is, I get when you give a guy a gimmick. Let me think of some of the guys out there right now. Brock Lesnar. We knew that he was a UFC fighter. He doesn't really have a gimmick except for that he's an ass kicker kind of thing. John Cena. He has a gimmick, but it's not like. Well, people make fun of him all the time, but it's not like cartoony. But when you look at Los Matadores, it's just like they look like they're human Ninja Turtles with their headbands on. They were fine as the Colognes. That name, the history of that name, being a tag team, from what their father's done to them, there was nothing wrong with that. But it's just like little things like this just bother me, and it's just, there's no more Saturday morning cartoons, there's no more Saturday morning wrestling, so there shouldn't be any more Saturday morning gimmicks, if I had to say.
Yeah, I think that another thing that I would say is I'm not even so upset about the cartoon-y gimmicks. I'm just upset that there isn't more depth in the gimmicks that we have. So, and this goes across the board. If you look at a cross-section of 90s wrestling, so, early 90s to late 90s, so you got kind of the end of the 80s kind of rock and wrestling, then that starts to the new generation and then to the Attitude Era. Not one character was similar. I mean, you think of like The Undertaker, you think of Stone Cold, you think of Shawn Michaels, The Rock, Triple H. All of those people were different characters, and now I feel like a lot of them kind of have the same thing. There isn't a lot of depth in the characters. Like, okay, so you've got Big Show, you've got Roman Reigns, you've got John Cena, you've got Dean Ambrose. Really, there's nothing except for size and body type that's differentiating them. Dean Ambrose is like unstable, but other than that, like they're all kind of, there's not anything that jumps out at you. So I definitely think that was something that I would love to see as more just depth in the characters.
Sure. I mean, once again, kudos to Triple H because, I watch that show and there's nothing like I can watch and be like, I hate this, or these gimmicks are horrible, or the timing on this is bad. And every person, man, is different. Everything you watch down there is great, and it's almost like I can't believe this is the developmental, and Raw is the main roster. Hopefully things change up for him, but we talked a lot about love stuff, what we love to see, what we would love to see in the next few years, this year, whenever it happens. As fans, because we're both fans, right, Jonathan? So these are kind of the things that we just want to see.
Yeah, this is the kind of thing, though, that it's a good debate, it's a good topic, just because everybody's got something that they want to see in the world of professional wrestling, and I would definitely tell you guys to voice those opinions and make your opinions be heard. Whether it's if you like Damien Mizdow, then buy his T-shirt. If you like a certain thing that's happening with the Wyatts or whatever, make sure that you're saying those things whenever they ask. They do the polls on WWE.com or whatever, because this is truly the way that they get feedback. And you get a lot of people right now that are complaining about Roman Reigns. Well, the reason that Roman's still in the spot that he's in is because there are enough people out there that have stood up for Roman and the character. So please tell everybody what you love, because if not, then you can't really complain about it. That's my thoughts on it.
That's right. And if you guys are out there right now looking for something to get your significant other, and you already haven't, then why don't you head on over to ProWrestlingTees.com/Another Wrestling Podcast and pick up one of our shirts. There's 3 of them. There's going to be more on the way, but if you guys pick up a shirt, it supports us. It helps us out. So head on over there, ProWrestlingTees.com, Another Wrestling Podcast, and let us know if you got a shirt. Send us a photo, tweet us, Facebook it, and we will respond with a thank you. But speaking of the man who had quite the real gimmick, Jonathan. Val Venis is in the house, and we're going to talk to him right now.
Hello, ladies.
Hello, listeners. Today we have a very special show for you. Our guest is none other than a multi-time wrestling champion, a political activist, and he dabbled in porn. Please give a warm Another Wrestling Podcast welcome to Val Venis.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking right there. Excellent intro.
All right. How you doing, Val?
I'm doing very well, very well. I've been busy, but I'm doing well.
All right. Now, I don't know that I know a lot about your early life prior to getting into wrestling. So, what was your life like growing up?
It was a pretty standard life, you know. I grew up racing motocross since I was 5 years old, and then, you know, when I turned 18 and I started getting into wrestling and whatnot, as soon as I started wrestling full time, I left motocross and freestyle skiing as well in the wintertime. And so I had a pretty standard upbringing. I got a brother and two sisters. My brother wrestles as well. He wrestles under the gimmick name Vic Venus. And so it's a kind of a comedy type deal, in relation to the Val Venis character.
All right. Now, if you could tell us, is wrestling maybe the first thing you ever remember wanting to do professionally?
No, actually, I always loved professional wrestling. I thought it was fantastic entertainment. You know, my brother and I, we'd watch it, every weekend up in Canada. We had Saturdays, we have Maple Leaf Wrestling, for example, up in Toronto. So we would watch that all the time. And it wasn't until, I wrestled all through high school as well. It wasn't until I met a professional wrestler by the name of Dewey Robertson and his son, Jason Robertson. Is basically how I started training with them. But it was one of those things where I just wanted to train just to learn how to do it, because I always felt that maybe I was too small, or it was too much of a stretch to actually reach a goal of becoming a legitimate professional wrestler. So I wanted to learn it just for the fun of it, because I always loved watching it growing up. As I got into it, I started to realize that, hey, this is something that, I could think I could do as a career. And then once I started wrestling full-time in England, which was really only supposed to be for a summer, the idea was the promoter in England called me up and basically said, hey, do you want to come over here for the summer? This is right after I graduated high school, and asked if I wanted to come over for the summer. And heck, I've never been to England before. So I figured I'd go over there and wrestle for the summer and, start university in the fall. What happened is I fell in love with the business, realized I could do this, and I spent a whole year over in England, and that began my full-time career. I didn't go to university after that. I just stayed wrestling full-time.
Well, that kind of leads us into our next question. When you broke into the business, you spent a lot of time wrestling around the world before you landed in WWE. What were some of the highlights of your early, I guess, pre-WWE career?
Oh, that's actually a really good question. Over in England, I met guys like Robbie Brookside, Doc Dean, Dave Taylor. There are so many guys over there that really, I guess you could kind of say were coaches. Basically, they had a lot of experience under the ring at the time, and so I learned a lot from them. And like I said, I wrestled over there for, full time for a whole year. So I gained a lot of experience really, really fast with that European style of wrestling. When I came back to Canada, I was home for about 2 days, and my tag partner and I went down to Arkansas. When we went down to Arkansas, we kind of fell more into an American style, so we were learning the American style again. But we were only down there for about 8 months. We came back from Arkansas. We spent about a day and a half at home after about 8 months in Arkansas. And then we got our first really big gig down for the WWC in Puerto Rico. And that began a 6-year stint of wrestling 5 days a week, every single week, all year long for 6 years straight. And at that point, that's where we really started to learn, basically calling stuff in the ring. And so, and we were learning a completely different style. So my tag partner, Shane, and I, we were learning different styles, right from the get-go, a year of the European style. Then we had 8 months of the American style. And then, of course, 6 years in Puerto Rico. It really complemented how we learned and what we learned. And of course, after that, and Puerto Rico was phenomenal. I mean, wrestling 5 days a week, every single week, all year long, that's something that guys just don't do today. It just doesn't happen. And that's why really the WWE needs to have that developmental territory, because there really is no full-time territories left other than Japan and Mexico.
Sure.
I mean, even Puerto Rico's down to a few days a year. After Puerto Rico, I left to Mexico. I spent almost 2 years in Mexico. Became world champion over there. And that's, again, learning another completely different style. And then, of course, I was bouncing back and forth between Mexico and Japan. So I learned a lot of different styles before I landed in WWE, which is something that's incredibly rare these days.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking of landing in WWE, how exactly did that go about? Was there, a phone call, or how did you make it in there?
Yeah, so basically what happened is they brought me in from Mexico City into Des Moines, Iowa for 2 days, and they wanted to talk to me and watch me work. So I went and did a dark match there in Des Moines, Iowa. And then, they said, okay, we really like it. We're going to send you down an offer. Go back to Mexico. We'll be in touch. And at the time, I went back. I still had a long time left on my contract. I had about 8 months left at that point in Mexico. And so they asked me to come up and do a camp that they were going to start up. And that's where, I ran into Edge. Now, I had started with Edge. We kind of took two different career paths. He stayed in Canada and the States doing independence. And, of course, I went around to small territories around the world. And, after I left Canada, I didn't see Edge again until we met up at the camp in WWE. And so I spent 2 weeks at that camp, and then I went back down to Mexico. And I guess about a week or so after, I left the camp to go back down to Mexico City to continue performing, Vince called me up and threw a character idea by me, and that was basically it. It was the Val Venis porn star character turned pro wrestler, and I was like, you don't need to twist my arm anymore. Excuse me, any harder than that? I mean, that's a perfect gimmick for me.
Now, you said that Vince gave you the character. How much input did you get to have on that character? Did he kind of want you to make it your own, or how did...
Yeah, he basically had a general outline. When he first mentioned it to me, he said the Val Venis character is a character that was a former film star turned pro wrestler. And the first thing that popped into my head was Jesse Ventura, the whole Hollywood gimmick. And I was like, yeah, that's been done. And then he said, actually, Val Venis was a former adult film star turned pro wrestler. And so that hooked me. He basically gave out just the general outline. And of course, as we went through and developed the character, I was adding things to it. Like I added the towel because nobody's ever worn a towel around their waist going to the ring. And I felt that's a perfect idea for the character. The Hello Ladies catch line is something I threw in there. So it was developed over a period of time before I actually debuted. A lot of the development actually came out of the vignettes. It was the very first vignette that I did when I stepped out of the shower and wrapped the towel around my waist. That's when it clicked that I need to wear this to the ring. And then, of course, the very first vignette when I did the Hello Ladies, I was like, that clicked. I need to say that every single time. And then once I went down to the ring, it was just on the fly. I was just going to go down there and tell a joke, but I decided to throw that tagline in there as well and say the Hello Ladies thing, and it caught on, and we took it from there.
All right. Now, during the Attitude Era, you pretty much thrived in it. Like what you were just saying, you said some pretty racy lines pre-match. Do you have any favorite lines or memorable ones that remain with you today that you just have in your head that maybe you think's just funny that you loved?
Oh, absolutely. I think the Rubik's Cube one was phenomenal. I always love that one. And, of course, the one with my right leg being Christmas and my left leg being New Year's. So, ladies, why don't you just come visit the Big Valboski between the holidays? That's another one that I think really stuck out as well. So those are the two main ones that stuck out. I'm going to say about 50% of my jokes were written by either Al. Well, most of that 50% was written by Al Snow.
Oh, really?
And Kane would throw a few in there as well. So about half the time I could come up with some decent jokes, but whenever I had a brain fart and I couldn't think up, I couldn't write anything, the first person I would go to is Al Snow. He seems to be a genius at that stuff.
Now, the Attitude Era was known for, pushing the envelope. Were you ever asked for anything that you thought maybe was pushing it too far, or was everything pretty much good for you?
Everything was excellent for me. I mean, I really enjoyed it. The one thing I really kind of was disappointed with was the fact that we were going in that direction where we could push the envelope, we could shock people and entertain people at the same time. The one thing that kind of irked me a little bit was when they decided to go PG, it basically destroyed my character. And of course, reinventing the character, it never really seemed to gain traction again after that. You know what I mean? The Val Venis character, I do not believe can thrive the way it did in a PG era. It just can't.
No.
Definitely. Now, speaking of a controversial character, you've worked with Vince Russo and Eric Bischoff. What are your thoughts about working with these guys? Because I know you spent a lot of time with them kind of in the Attitude Era.
Yeah, I like them both. I mean, I thought Vince Russo, it was a phenomenal writer. He had phenomenal ideas when he was kept behind the camera. Once he went over to WCW and he kind of got in front of the camera, I think that it took away. I think instead of putting 100% effort into his writing ability, he was putting 50% into his writing ability and 50% into becoming a talent. And I think that just diluted his abilities. It diluted his talent, and I think that really cost him.
Sure.
Now, other than the right to censor Val Venis, which I have to say was my least favorite incarnations of Val Venis, was there any talk about ever changing your character or maybe putting you in a different direction?
Oh, yeah, there was. It was like they wanted to do the Chief Morley gimmick. I wasn't a big fan of the name Chief Morley, but I did like the character. The problem was it was basically Stone Cold Steve Austin had taken some time off at that point, and so they decided to make the Chief Morley character the right-hand man with Eric Bischoff. And so things were going fairly well for a short period of time, and then Austin came back and he needed a spot, and he couldn't perform. And so they put him in that spot and turned me back to being Val Venis again, which, I mean, if we're not going to put 100% into doing something, then we should never have started it in the first place. And so that kind of irked me a little bit, but, it's one of those things, what can you do?
Yeah, definitely. Now, you won several championships in the WWE. Was there ever one that was your favorite?
Yeah, definitely the IC title, the Intercontinental title. It's always been some of my favorite wrestlers have held that title, from Mr. Perfect to Ricky Steamboat. I mean, it's Macho Man. I mean, just great in-ring technical performers. Always seem to go after the IC title, and so that was always a title I wanted to win, and I got it twice, and so yeah, I was happy with that.
All right.
Now, you left WWE in 2009. And then you went on to do some independents and even ended up in TNA for a while. Is there any chance that we'll get to see the Big Valboski back in, any of those major companies in the future?
Never say never. As far as getting back into full-time wrestling, I've got other things on the go right now, so that's not even on the radar. I do know that every once in a while I do miss performing. So it's I can definitely see myself wanting to perform sometime in the future, maybe again. But right now, I've just got too many other things on the go. And it's one of those things where if it happens, I'll know it if it happens to me. If I get that itch to really get back into the ring and do another year or two worth of a run, it's something that I have no desire to do at this point in time. But never say never, that's for sure.
All right. Now, we constantly hear about the other side of pro wrestling, the backstage politics, if you will. Were you ever a victim of to the politics of pro wrestling?
I believe I was at some point. It's not something I like to get into too much. If I notice that writers want to write for other people and there's some ass kissing going on there, it's like whatever. It's something I didn't really care about. Mm-hmm. I try to stay away from that politics as much as possible. At this point in time, if I ever went back there, it would definitely be under a lot stricter conditions than, back when I was wrestling full time. It was like, just tell me what you want me to do. I'll go out there and do it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. If I ever went back, it would definitely have to be some incentives. That's for sure.
Now, speaking of politics, we're going to get onto a different type of politics. You've been actively involved as part of the Libertarian Party. What do you feel are some of today's biggest problems with regards to U.S. government?
Oh, wow. Man, you just opened up the Pandora box on that one. I would say, first and foremost, the Federal Reserve. The private Federal Reserve has to go. I think the coining of currency should be put back into the hands of Congress. I think we should be backed by a commodity. It doesn't really matter what the commodity is. Obviously, I would prefer the dollar to be backed by gold or silver, but anything is better than nothing. And right now, it's backed by nothing. Mm-hmm. It only maintains its value. And I can't even say it's maintained its value. Since 1913, the dollar's lost over 98% of its value. So it's not holding its value at all. But it's backed by nothing. The only thing that really holds it up and gives it any buying power whatsoever is faith. The fact that you have faith that you can take that dollar bill and walk into a store and buy a loaf of bread with it. Of course, if we study history, it's happened over and over and over again. Every single fiat currency collapses. And, to watch Americans get up and go to work every day and think everything's hunky-dory. They watch the Super Bowl. They watch wrestling. They watch boxing, MMA. Everything's fine. Everything's, hunky-dory, and nobody's taking necessary moves to protecting their buying power. And the real concern now are the people that have worked 30 and 40 and 50 years to save $1 million for retirement, and they want to live off the interest. And, in a period of 5 years, once super hyperinflation hits, that $1 million won't buy you a loaf of bread. You lose everything. And, nobody believes that'll happen in America. It's absolutely going to happen in America. And we're getting close to that. It could happen tomorrow. It could happen 10 years from now. But we're real close to that collapse coming. And it's just a matter of time. Nobody knows when it's going to happen, but it's going to happen. It's, the fiat currencies don't stand strong. So the first thing I would say, we need to get rid of the Federal Reserve. We need to give the authority to coin currency back to Congress, and it needs to be backed by a solid, valuable commodity. So that would be the first and foremost. That would end a lot of the problems right off the top. The second thing I would do is I would get rid of social programs, government-run social programs, not privately run social programs, but government-run social programs need to go. I would abolish all forms of direct taxation, so income tax, inheritance tax, corporate taxes, business taxes, things of that nature. I'd abolish right away. Government doesn't have a right to steal people's money, and that's just, the way I feel. And I think that would definitely empower citizens to really take control of their own destiny and really move forward in their own lives. I think you'd have a lot more people retiring earlier. I think you'd have a lot more successful businesses. I think you'd see the unemployment rate come down to almost nothing. Anybody that wants to work will be able to work. The Federal Reserve needs to go. Government-run social programs needs to go, and we need to back our currency by something of value, some kind of commodity that holds its value.
Wow. You know what you're talking about. Do you think you'll ever run for public office?
Never say never again, but at this point in time, I'd never get elected. If I was going to run and say, hey, we need to get rid of all these taxes, we need to, back our currency by a commodity, corporations would be funding crazy amounts of money against me. They benefit from a fiat currency. They benefit from social programs. They don't have to pay their employees as much in that case there. So it's one of those things where I just don't think a libertarian like me could get elected, and the only way I'd get elected is in Canada anyway, as I am a Canadian citizen. However, I do fully support the idea of Fox News correspondent Judge Napolitano, Andrew Napolitano. I would absolutely support him if he decides to run for president. I think he would be even better than Ron Paul. I think he would be the man that could turn America around. Of course, if he ever did get in, and I don't think he would, I think corporations would fund against him hugely. But if he ever did get in, I can completely see him being assassinated at some point in time, for sure.
Now, fans may not know this, but Glenn Jacobs, or Kane, is also a libertarian. Did you guys really get into it, or do you guys still talk about politics a lot?
Yeah, we do every once in a while. I reach out to him every once in a while, and we chat. When I first met Glenn, he was he was a Republican, but he was more libertarian leaning, I would say. And when we started debating, and I'd debate with Al Snow all the time, and Kane would come into the debates. Kane is a real smart guy. Kane was indoctrinated the same way I was, where, you're just indoctrinated to believe in government. I didn't start learning about libertarianism until I left high school and started studying it on my own and started to realize that, whoa, there's another side of the coin I was never taught in school. So Kane was victim to that same kind of indoctrination. And when I started showing him what I had learned, I only showed him a little bit. And the next thing I know, he's buying book after book after book, all these incredible books that I've already read, and he became a libertarian monster. And it was phenomenal to see. I mean, he's a smart guy that likes to study, likes to really understand the inner workings of different programs, how government works. And he got into studying Austrian economics, which is absolutely phenomenal. And yeah, he's a huge monster of a libertarian now.
All right. Other than being a libertarian, you are also pushing for the legalization of marijuana. How did you get involved in this issue?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the reasons I won't do anything with WWE right now as well. Until they stop finding guys for, THC in their system, I've taken a stand. I understand their position as a corporation. They say they want to follow the law. Well, I'll tell you how it came about was, I used to be anti-everything up until I was about 28. And of course, by the time I reached 28, I already had several injuries. And of course, the doctor's recommendations were always the same: anti-inflammatories and pain pills. And so, every time I got injured, it was anti-inflammatories and pain pills. Well, after I had shoulder surgery, I had 6 screws, put into my shoulder. I was on those pain pills and anti-inflammatories for 3 months straight. And once I stopped, I remember waking up in the recliner after about 3 months, and I had slept the whole night for the first time in 3 months. I didn't feel any more throbbing in my shoulder, so I stopped taking the pain pills. And a day and a half later, I was in the fetal position in the middle of the living room floor, covered in sweat, but ice cold and just sick as a dog. And my body was going through pain pill withdrawals. And it probably lasted about 2 weeks. About the first week into those withdrawals, it was getting so horrendous that I was dying to go back to the doctor and get another prescription for more pills just so I could feel normal again and get rid of the withdrawals. And one of my friends had said, just smoke weed, man. And at the time, I'd smoked weed a couple times just recreationally, but didn't know much about it. I was like, it's not going to work, man. I'm sick as a dog. And sure enough, I tried it anyways. I still had the withdrawals, but weed made it so I didn't care that I was going through withdrawals. I had no desire to go to the doctor and get some more pills. And it really helped me power my way through those withdrawals. It lasted in total about 2 weeks. After about 2 weeks, it was about another month before I got my energy back. But if it wasn't for marijuana, I for sure would have gone back to the doctor to get more pills just so I would feel normal. I wouldn't feel sick anymore. And so that's when I noticed that, whoa, I didn't need rehab. I didn't need, any kind of, pushing to power my way through it. All I needed was to smoke a little bit of weed here and there. And it really helped me get through those withdrawals. And that's when I said, wow, there's some medical benefits to this. And I started studying. And once I start studying something, I get into it, full bore. I was reading everything I could read on cannabis. I was, watching all the documentaries on it. And I start, reviewing the studies that have been done on cannabis, and then reviewing the studies themselves as well, how they were done, who funded these studies. Because one thing I did notice is a lot of the negative studies that were done on cannabis were all funded by federal agencies. All the positive studies were done by private universities all over the world. And so I noticed that there was a bias in these studies. And that's when I really started to become angry at how government was basically funding studies to keep marijuana illegal. And it wasn't that they wanted to keep marijuana illegal. It turns out that they want to keep hemp illegal in order to protect big oil, in order to protect big pharmaceutical companies, the big cotton industry, the lumber industry. So they use marijuana and demonize it as a way to keep the real competitor illegal, which is hemp. And so that's when I really started to become passionate about it and started learning all the other benefits from cannabis. And now, I'm a huge fan of cannabis. I think everybody should be allowed to grow it without any rules, regulations, or restrictions. And so, that's how I feel about cannabis. I think it's the best thing ever. I don't even take Advil anymore. I just use cannabis for everything. I use it for recreation. I use it for headaches. I use it for pain. I use it for anti-inflammatory effects. I use it for everything.
Nice.
Now, this is a sad part about this, but you have lost some friends in wrestling due to prescription pills like you were talking about. Do you think we'd have less deaths in wrestling if they were a little more lax on marijuana use?
Absolutely. Hands down. That's one of the reasons that I've kind of taken a stance against going back to, or even, we're even offering myself up back to WWE. And one of the reasons is they fine guys $2,500 every time they pop for THC. And so what do guys do? Well, they just get a prescription for opiate-based pain pills, and they continue taking pain pills. If they pop for hydrocodone or oxycodone, they just have to show a valid prescription. I've done it. And you get a letter in the mail a few weeks later saying, congratulations, you passed this drug test. And so guys don't utilize cannabis. Instead, they utilize a drug that's, killed a lot of my friends, killed a lot of my colleagues, and they avoid cannabis, which can do the same thing for them as the pills can, and they'll wake up every single morning, and they'll probably get the best night's sleep ever. So basically what's happening with WWE is they tell me that they're a corporation, they have to follow federal law. And I can understand that. But their actions are in fact telling me that following federal law is in fact more important than the health and well-being of their talent. And so it's government that puts WWE in that position. Because if they allow guys to use marijuana indiscriminately, they can be fined and massively from the federal government. And so it's the federal government that puts WWE in this position. And it's one of those things where I understand their position, but at the same time, they should be taking the lead on this issue. They have the money, they have the power to influence Washington, and they should be saying, hey, you're forcing us to put following your law over the health and well-being of our talent. And we feel cannabis will be better for our talent, for those that choose to utilize it, instead of big pharmaceutical medications. NFL is now taking that lead. NFL is sitting down and saying, let's examine the cannabis issue. There's been enough players that said, we don't want to use pharmaceuticals. We want to use cannabis. It's healthier and it's better for us, and it does the same thing, and it does it without any negative side effects that are going to put us 6 feet under. And so to watch the NFL at least sit down and consider cannabis for their players is an incredible move forward for cannabis. But it's sad for me to watch, an organization that I absolutely love in terms of WWE, sit back and just say, we're just going to keep fining guys $2,500 and not even consider the fact that cannabis can be utilized in a very healthy way for their talents. So it's a sad stance. It's the federal government that puts these corporations into those positions. And, I really wish WWE would stand up and actually blaze that trail, saying, hey, we want to examine this. We want to do tests. We want to see what happens going forward in terms of allowing our talent to use cannabis instead of pharmaceuticals.
Oh, nice. Marijuana legalization had some victories in 2014. Do you think this will continue in 2015 and so on?
Absolutely. There's a huge push down here in Arizona. We're actually drawing up an initiative now that we're going to vote on for 2016. 2016, that'll get voted on, and there's a real good chance that January 1st, 2017, it'll be 21 and older. Also, there's a bill going through the state house right now here in Arizona that's trying to totally decriminalize it. So we may even have it decriminalized even before we vote on it in 2016. And of course, there's a bunch of other states with the MPP, which is the Marijuana Policy Project. They're the ones that funded the initiative both in Colorado and Washington, also in Alaska and Washington, D.C., and of course, Oregon as well. They're funding, I believe it's 8 other states, with Arizona being one of them as well, for 2016. So I think you're going to see a lot more of the walls of prohibition crumble. It's already crumbling at an accelerated rate, not just in America, but all over the world. So I think that this is something, everything's moving in the right direction. It's just not moving fast enough for me. I want it legalized today.
Nice.
Now, other than marijuana, what are some of the other issues that you feel strongly about? Like, I know that you spoke about the reserves and stuff, but your thoughts on like GMOs or any of those things?
I'm not against GMOs. I'm really not. I would prefer not to have like genetically modified corn and things of that nature, where the plants are actually genetically modified to grow most of their own pesticides. And so I'm not a big fan of that. But I am an absolute fan of the free markets. And so what I do not like with genetically modified products is the fact that the main company that's producing these is strong-arming farmers into meeting their demands and putting them under contract, keeping them indebted. And of course, they're also trying to squash organic competition. I'm against, squashing any kind of competition and having a monopoly. Right now, Monsanto has a monopoly over your grocery store because 90% of the food in your grocery store is genetically modified and produced by Monsanto or Monsanto contracted farms. So I'm completely against monopolies. I don't think Monsanto should be using government to maintain their dominance in the industry, because basically, if you have a farmer that agrees to sign on with Monsanto and grow genetically modified corn, and the next door neighboring farm grows organic corn, any seeds or anything like that float over into the organic farm's property, Monsanto can now come in and seize that property. And that's just it's theft, and it's criminal. And of course, what can you do about it? They're backed by governments, and so I'm completely against monopolies in genetically modified foods. I'm all for competition. I think organic growing farms should be able to compete with genetically modified farms on an even keel. So I'm not against GMOs. I'm just against their use of government to squash their competition. And it's a mob. It's a mafia, is what it is. It's a government protected.
Lightning round.
Who is your favorite president of all time?
Oof, man.
And I know you're from Canada, so maybe even a Canadian president or American president.
I really don't have one other than Ronald. Other than Ronald Reagan. Oh man, yeah, I would have to. If I had to choose one, I would have to say it would be Ronald Reagan. I think he didn't get done exactly what he wanted to do. He absolutely spent a lot of money. But I don't think that was him, because the way he campaigned and the way he talked, he had different feelings on certain things. I like Carter's desire to want to, legalize cannabis back in the 70s, but I do not like Carter's economics or his social programs at all. I like Reagan's economics, but I mean, let's face it, the no matter what president you have in power right now, the corporations and the big central banking cartel runs the show. So yeah, that basically, I mean, when you're asking me what my favorite president is, I can only basically tell you who my favorite is based on their own personality and not on what they do, because what gets done is controlled by the big central banking cartel and the big corporations that grow up around that banking cartel. But if I had to choose, Ronald Reagan.
All right.
Okay, now where do you rank yourself amongst the other wrestling Canadians?
In terms of
just overall career achievements.
I would say it's fairly well up there. I mean, it was. It's kind of hard to say. That's a really good question. I'm going to say maybe at least in the top third. Anyway, top third of Canadian wrestlers. I'm definitely up there.
All right. How about a favorite adult film actress?
I'm sorry. Say again.
How about a favorite adult film actress?
Oh. Favorite adult film actress? Oh, what was her name? Jasmine St. Clair, I guess.
There you go.
Yeah, Jasmine St. Clair. I met her a couple times. She was pretty cool.
Okay. How many countries would you say you've wrestled in?
Oh, man. Let's see. Well, I've wrestled all over Europe. Canada, Mexico, United States, Japan, Australia. I guess we're going to say at least 25.
All right.
All right, so to this day, when you get out of the shower and put a towel on, do you still take it off like you did in the WWE?
I don't put a towel on anymore. I just run. I run out of that shower straight into bed and get it on with my wife. No towel required.
Have you ever used "Hello, ladies" as a pickup line?
No, I actually haven't. Never even crossed my mind. I usually never even bring that up until a fan says, "Just say it, just say it," and then of course, yeah, I'll throw it out there. But no, I've never used it for a pickup line.
Well, I've used it at least twice today, so I just want you to know that.
Perfect. I know some guys that have some real good success with it. That's for sure.
All right, how about a favorite munchie?
Ooh, favorite munchie. I'm going to say popcorn.
All right.
Okay. And
yeah, because there's nothing better than going to the movie theater and getting high as hell out the parking lot, and then walking into the movie theater stinking like cannabis like there's no tomorrow, and ordering popcorn and watching the guy's face as he looks up at you and goes, "Wow, man. You ever thought about using perfume?" I said, "Why would I want to dilute this smell?"
And what does the future hold for you?
Right now, we opened up Canada's Vapor Lounge here in Tempe, Arizona, and of course, I have my partner Andrew, who's basically running that full time now. That's his baby now, and so I go there and I'm started up the Captain Cannabis show. And we're doing it out of the Purple Haze house all the time. but we're going to take it on the road as well. We're going to cover cannabis cups. We're going to cover hemp cons. We're going to have tips and tricks. We're going to have grow tips for those that have authorization to grow. We're going to have product reviews, strain reviews. So yeah, I got a lot of desire to want to build the Captain Cannabis show right now.
We really appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us. Where can people keep up with you these days? You're on the social media verse with Twitter and Facebook and all that?
Absolutely. They can follow me on Twitter at Val Venis, ENT, which is short for entertainment. So it's Val Venis, ENT. They can also like my Facebook page. That's facebook.com/Captain with a K, Cannabis with a K, and of course show with an S. So it's facebook.com/Captain Cannabis Show. And then they can also follow me on YouTube and subscribe to my new channel, youtube.com/Captain Cannabis Show. And of course, again, Captain with a K and Cannabis with a K as well.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you for having me. Greatly appreciated.